I remember the day vividly, the day that I had a close call with danger that I will never forget. I was on a solo kayaking trip along the coast, hoping to catch a glimpse of some of the local wildlife. As I paddled, the water was calm, and the sun was shining, but something felt off. It was as if the water had an eerie, unsettling energy. As I rounded a bend, I saw something in the water that I couldn't quite make out. It looked like a person, but their skin was too pale, and their hair was too long and stringy. I thought it might be a drowning victim, so I paddled closer to help. But as I got closer, I realized that it wasn't a person at all. It was a mermaid. At first, I was awestruck. I had always thought that mermaids were just a myth, a fanciful creation of sailors and storytellers. But there she was, right in front of me. She had a beautiful face, with sparkling eyes and full lips, but her expression was cold and menacing. Suddenly, the mermaid lunged at me with surprising speed and agility. She wrapped her slimy arms around my kayak and tried to drag me under the water. I was so scared that I almost froze, but I managed to fight her off with my paddle. I hit her in the face, and she let go, disappearing under the water with a loud splash. I paddled back to shore as fast as I could, my heart pounding in my chest. I was shaken and scared, but I couldn't help feeling a sense of wonder at what I had just experienced. I had always been a skeptic, but now I knew that there were some things in this world that were beyond explanation. Now, whenever I'm out on the water, I keep a close eye out for any signs of danger, knowing that there are some things out there that are best left unseen. I was on vacation with my family in a small coastal town known for its beaches and abundant marine life. I've always loved the ocean, so I couldn't wait to go swimming and explore the underwater world. One day, I decided to go for a swim in the early morning while the rest of my family was still sleeping. As I swam out, I noticed something strange in the water. It looked like a woman's head, but her hair was long and green. At first, I thought it might be a prank or a prop left by someone on the beach, but as I swam closer, I realized that it was a real, live mermaid. She was beautiful, with luminous green eyes and skin that glimmered in the sunlight. But as I approached her, she started to swim away, leading me deeper and deeper into the ocean. I followed her, mesmerized by her graceful movements, until I realized that I was far from shore and alone with a creature that I didn't fully understand. Suddenly, the mermaid stopped and turned towards me. She looked at me with an intense gaze, and I felt like she was reading my mind. I tried to swim away, but she caught me by the arm and pulled me towards her. I was terrified as she whispered in my ear, telling me that she had been watching me and that she wanted to keep me with her forever. She promised to show me wonders that no human had ever seen before, and I could feel her hypnotic voice drawing me closer. But in that moment, I remembered something my grandmother had told me when I was a child: never trust a mermaid. They were beautiful, yes, but they were also dangerous and unpredictable. Summoning all my strength, I managed to break free of her grip and swim away as fast as I could. I could feel her chasing me, her voice calling out to me, but I didn't look back. When I finally reached the shore, I collapsed on the sand, gasping for breath. I never told my family what happened, and I never went swimming alone again. But sometimes, when I'm near the ocean, I can still hear her voice calling out to me, tempting me to come back and explore the mysteries of the deep. I remember the day I met the mermaid like it was yesterday. It was a hot summer day, and I decided to go for a swim at the beach near my house. The water was crystal clear, and I could see all the way to the bottom. As I was swimming, I noticed something strange in the water. It was a woman with long, flowing hair and a beautiful tail. I had heard of mermaids before, but I never believed they were real. The mermaid saw me and started swimming towards me. At first, I was amazed and thought it was incredible to see a real-life mermaid. But as she got closer, I started to feel uneasy. She didn't look like the friendly and cheerful mermaids I had seen in movies. Her face was twisted into an angry expression, and her eyes were dark and menacing. I tried to swim away, but she was too fast. She grabbed me by the leg and started pulling me down into the water. I struggled to break free, but she was incredibly strong. I thought I was going to die. I had never been so scared in my life. But then, something strange happened. The mermaid let go of me and swam away. I managed to swim back to shore and collapsed on the sand, gasping for air. My leg was bruised, and I had scratches all over my body. But I was alive. I never went back to that beach again. I knew that I had come too close to danger and that I had been lucky to escape with my life. But the memory of the mermaid still haunts me to this day, and I can't help but wonder what would have happened if she hadn't let me go. I've always been fascinated by the ocean, and as a scuba diver, I've had my fair share of encounters with different types of sea creatures. But nothing could have prepared me for the terrifying experience I had a few months ago. I was on a diving trip with a group of friends, exploring a beautiful coral reef off the coast of a small island. As we were swimming around, admiring the vibrant colors of the reef, I suddenly noticed something strange out of the corner of my eye. At first, I thought it was just a trick of the light, but as I turned my head to get a better look, I saw something that made my blood run cold. There, in the distance, was what appeared to be a mermaid. Its upper body was unmistakably human, with long, flowing hair and a beautiful face, but its lower half was that of a fish, complete with scales and a tail. I was frozen in place, staring at the creature in disbelief. I had heard stories about mermaids before, but I never thought I would actually see one in real life. Suddenly, the mermaid turned its head and looked directly at me. Its eyes were piercing and seemed to see right through me. I felt a chill run down my spine, and I knew I had to get out of there. I signaled to my friends and quickly swam back to the boat. As we climbed aboard, I couldn't help but glance back at the mermaid, which was now swimming closer to us. We started the engine and began to pull away, but the mermaid kept following us, its tail whipping through the water with alarming speed. It wasn't until we were several miles away from the reef that the mermaid finally gave up and disappeared into the depths of the ocean. I still have nightmares about that encounter, and I'm not sure if I'll ever be able to dive again. But one thing is for sure, I'll never forget the terror of coming face to face with a real-life mermaid. I've always loved the ocean. The sound of the waves crashing against the shore, the salty smell in the air, and the feeling of the sand between my toes. So when my friend suggested we take a midnight swim, I couldn't resist. We arrived at the beach around 11 p.m. The moon was high in the sky, casting an eerie glow over the ocean. We quickly changed into our swimsuits and ran towards the water. The waves were strong, and the water was freezing. But I didn't care. I was having the time of my life. That's when I saw her. A woman, standing at the edge of the water. She was beautiful, with long blonde hair and a slender figure. But there was something off about her. She was staring at us, and her eyes were empty, like she wasn't really looking at us but through us. I called out to her, asking if she was okay. But she didn't respond. She just stood there, watching us. We decided to swim back to shore. But as we were swimming, I felt something grab my ankle. I turned around, expecting to see my friend playing a prank on me. But there was no one there. That's when I saw her again. The woman from the shore, her arms wrapped around my leg. She was dragging me down, deeper and deeper into the water. I struggled, trying to break free. But she was too strong. I thought I was going to die. But then, something strange happened. Her grip loosened, and she let go of me. I swam back to the shore as fast as I could, and when I turned around, she was gone. I never went swimming at night again after that. And every time I think about that woman, I can't shake the feeling that she wasn't human. That she was something else, something dangerous. And that she was watching me, waiting for me to come back to the water. I never believed in the supernatural until I had a close encounter with a mermaid. It was a beautiful summer evening, and I decided to take a swim in the ocean. The water was calm and warm, and I was having the time of my life. As I swam further out, I noticed something moving in the water. At first, I thought it was a school of fish, but as it got closer, I realized it was something else entirely. It was a mermaid. I couldn't believe my eyes. I had heard stories of mermaids, but I never thought they were real. But there she was, swimming towards me with her long, flowing hair and shimmering tail. At first, I was thrilled. I had always been fascinated by mermaids, and I never thought I would get the chance to see one up close. But as she got closer, I began to feel uneasy. There was something about her that seemed off, something in her eyes that made me feel like I was in danger. She swam closer and closer, and I could see that she was beautiful, but there was something in her gaze that made my blood run cold. As she got closer, I tried to swim away, but it was too late. She reached out and grabbed my leg with her strong, webbed hands. I was terrified. I thrashed and kicked, trying to break free, but she was too strong. She pulled me closer and closer, and I could see that her teeth were sharp and pointed. Suddenly, I remembered something my grandfather had told me when I was a child. He had warned me about the dangers of mermaids, about how they lured sailors to their deaths with their beautiful songs and then devoured them. With all my might, I broke free from her grip and swam back to shore as fast as I could. I was panting and gasping for air when I finally reached the safety of the sand. I turned back to look at the ocean, and I saw her there, watching me with her haunting, otherworldly gaze. I knew then that I had had a close call with danger, and that I would never forget the terror of that encounter. From that day on, I never went swimming in the ocean alone again. And whenever I heard the sound of the waves crashing against the shore, I remembered the terrifying moment when I came face to face with a mermaid. I'm not one to scare easily, but something happened to me a few years ago that still gives me chills whenever I think about it. It was the summer of 2017, and I had just moved to a small coastal town in Maine to start a new job. I loved being so close to the ocean, and I spent most of my free time exploring the nearby beaches and rocky cliffs. One day, I decided to take a solo hike along the shoreline. It was a beautiful day, and I was enjoying the peaceful sound of the waves crashing against the rocks. As I walked, I noticed something strange in the water. At first, I thought it was just a large fish or maybe a seal, but as I got closer, I realized that it was something I had never seen before, a mermaid. I know how crazy it sounds, but there she was, with her long hair and shimmering tail. I couldn't believe my eyes. I froze in place, unsure of what to do. The mermaid seemed to be watching me, studying me with her piercing blue eyes. I wanted to reach out and touch her, to see if she was real, but something held me back. Suddenly, the mermaid started to swim away, and I felt a sense of relief wash over me. But then, as she got further out to sea, something changed. The waves grew bigger, the wind picked up, and the water turned a murky green color. I realized with horror that the mermaid was luring me into danger. I turned to run back to shore, but it was too late. The waves were too high, and the wind was too strong. I was being pulled out to sea, towards the mermaid. I tried to swim back to shore, but it felt like I was swimming against a powerful current. Just when I thought it was all over, I felt a strong hand grab onto me from behind. It was a fisherman who had seen me struggling and came to my rescue. He managed to drag me back to shore, and I collapsed onto the sand, shaking with fear and exhaustion. I never saw the mermaid again, but I know that she was real. And I'll never forget the terror I felt that day, knowing that she almost had me under her spell. I still love the ocean, but I'm always careful now, knowing that there are strange and dangerous things lurking in its depths. It was the summer of my senior year in college, and I was interning at a marine biology lab on the coast of Maine. As a marine biology major, I was excited to work in such a beautiful location and learn about the local wildlife. One afternoon, I decided to take a break and go for a swim in the nearby cove. The water was crystal clear and the sun was shining, making it the perfect day for a dip. As I swam farther out, I noticed something in the distance. It looked like a person, but as it got closer, I realized it was something else entirely. It was a mermaid. At first, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I had read about mermaids in folklore and mythology, but I never thought they could be real. The mermaid was beautiful, with long, flowing hair and a shimmering tail. She swam gracefully towards me, her eyes fixed on mine. As she got closer, I realized something was off. Her eyes were dark and empty, and there was a look of hunger in them. I suddenly felt a chill run down my spine. I tried to swim away, but she was too fast. She grabbed onto my leg and pulled me down into the depths of the ocean. I was terrified. I struggled to break free, but she held me tight. As we sank deeper into the water, I saw other mermaids swimming towards us. They were not like the one I had first encountered. These mermaids had sharp teeth and eyes that glinted in the dim light of the ocean. I knew I had to do something to survive. With all my strength, I managed to kick the mermaid in the face and break free. I swam upwards as fast as I could, ignoring the burning pain in my lungs. I broke the surface of the water, gasping for air. As I looked back down into the water, I saw the mermaids circling below me. They were angry, and I could hear their haunting songs filling the air. I swam as fast as I could back to shore, never looking back. From that day on, I never went back into the ocean. I knew that the mermaids were real, and that they were dangerous. I will never forget that close call, and the fear that still grips me when I think about it. I was always fascinated with the ocean. Its vastness and mystery always left me wanting to explore more. So, when my friends suggested we take a night dive in the open ocean, I jumped at the chance. As we geared up, I couldn't help but feel a sense of excitement and fear. I knew the dangers of diving at night, but I felt confident with my friends by my side. As we descended into the darkness, the only light coming from our flashlights, I felt a sense of calm wash over me. The ocean was peaceful, and I was in awe of the beauty that surrounded me. But then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw something. At first, I thought it was just my mind playing tricks on me, but as it got closer, I could see it was a mermaid. I couldn't believe my eyes. I had always thought mermaids were just myths and legends, but here was one right in front of me. As it got closer, I could see that it was unlike anything I had ever seen before. Its skin was pale and covered in scales, and its eyes were a haunting green color. At first, I was in awe, but as it got closer, I could feel the fear setting in. It seemed to be sizing us up, and I knew that we were in danger. Suddenly, it lunged at us, its sharp teeth bared. We scrambled to get away, but it was too fast. It grabbed my friend and pulled her under the water. I don't know how, but I managed to break free and swim to the surface. My heart was racing, and I could feel the panic setting in. I knew we had to get out of the water. As we made it back to the boat, I couldn't help but feel grateful to be alive. I had always thought of the ocean as a beautiful and peaceful place, but now I knew that danger lurked in its depths. I still have nightmares about that night, and every time I hear a story about mermaids, I can't help but shudder. I never want to experience something like that again. I'm not the type of person who gets spooked easily, but the encounter I had with a mermaid last summer still gives me chills. It was a beautiful day at the beach. My friends and I had been soaking up the sun for hours, and I decided to take a swim to cool off. I dove into the water and swam out as far as I could, feeling the waves crash against my body. As I was treading water, I felt something brush against my leg. At first, I thought it was just seaweed, but then it happened again, and this time it was stronger. I panicked and started swimming back to shore, but as I turned to look behind me, I saw her. She was unlike any mermaid I had ever seen before. Her skin was a pale blue, and her eyes were a piercing green. Her hair was long and flowing, and it shimmered like diamonds in the sun. But what really terrified me was her face. It wasn't friendly or welcoming, but instead, it was cold and expressionless. I knew I had to get away from her, but she was so fast. She swam circles around me, her cold eyes locked onto mine. I could feel her pulling me under, and I knew if I didn't break free, I would never make it back to shore. I kicked and thrashed, fighting against her grip, and finally, I broke free. I swam as fast as I could to the shore, never once looking back. When I got back to my friends, they could tell something was wrong. I told them what happened, but they just laughed it off, thinking I was joking. But I know what I saw, and I know what I felt. There's something out there in the water, something that's not quite human, and I hope to never come across it again. I grew up on the coast, so I was always around the water. As a child, I would spend hours exploring the tide pools, looking for sea creatures and shells. But one summer, when I was in my early 20s, I had an encounter with something that I couldn't explain. It was a warm night, and I decided to take a walk along the beach. The moon was full, casting a bright light across the sand. As I walked, I heard something that sounded like a woman singing. It was beautiful, but it also sent shivers down my spine. I walked closer to the water, trying to see where the sound was coming from. That's when I saw her, a woman in the water, singing to herself. But she wasn't just any woman. Her skin was pale and shimmering, and she had a fish's tail instead of legs. At first, I thought I was hallucinating. But as I stood there, frozen in fear, the mermaid turned her head and looked at me. Her eyes were dark and cold, and I could feel her gaze piercing through me. I turned and ran as fast as I could, back to my car. But as I got closer, I realized that something was wrong. My keys were gone, and my car had been moved from where I had parked it. I panicked, wondering what to do. That's when I heard the singing again, louder this time. I turned around, and there she was, the mermaid, standing on the sand, holding my keys. She threw them to me, and I caught them in midair. I didn't waste any time. I jumped into my car and drove away as fast as I could. When I looked back in the rearview mirror, I saw her standing there, watching me go. I never went back to that beach again. I don't know what that mermaid wanted from me, but I knew it wasn't good. I still get chills thinking about that night, and I always warn people to stay away from the water when the moon is full. You never know what might be lurking in the waves. I always loved spending my summers at my family's beach house, just a few miles down the coast from a small fishing village. It was my peaceful getaway, a place where I could relax and escape from the stresses of everyday life. But one summer, something happened that shattered my peaceful paradise forever. It was a particularly hot day, so I decided to take a walk along the beach. As I walked, I saw something strange in the water. At first, I thought it was a seal, but as it got closer, I realized it was something entirely different. It was a mermaid. At first, I was in awe. I had always thought mermaids were just a myth, but here one was, swimming right in front of me. But as I watched, I started to feel uneasy. There was something off about this mermaid. Its eyes were dark and menacing, and its movements seemed calculated and predatory. I should have left then and there, but I was too mesmerized by the sight of a real-life mermaid. I stayed put, watching it swim closer and closer to shore. It was only when it was just a few feet away from me that I realized my mistake. The mermaid lunged at me, its sharp teeth gleaming in the sunlight. I barely had time to react before I felt its cold, clammy hands wrap around my ankles, pulling me into the water. I struggled to break free, but the mermaid was too strong. As I sank deeper and deeper into the water, I thought I was going to die. But then, out of nowhere, a group of fishermen appeared, armed with spears. They managed to fend off the mermaid and pull me back to safety. I never returned to that beach house again. The memory of that mermaid's cold, menacing eyes haunts me to this day. I've never told anyone what happened that day, and I don't think I ever will. But I know that I'll never be able to forget the feeling of being dragged down into the depths of the ocean, just inches away from becoming a mermaid's prey. It was a beautiful summer day, and I decided to take a break from work and go for a swim at the beach. I drove to my favorite spot, a secluded cove where I could be alone with my thoughts. As I waded into the water, I felt a sense of calm wash over me. The sun was warm on my skin, and the water was refreshing. I swam out to a sandbar and floated on my back, watching the clouds drift by. But then I heard something. A soft singing, coming from the water below. At first, I thought it was just my imagination, but the sound grew louder and more distinct. I realized it was a woman's voice, singing a haunting melody. I swam back to the shore and saw a woman sitting on the rocks by the water's edge. She was beautiful, with long flowing hair and a tail that shimmered in the sunlight. I couldn't believe what I was seeing, a mermaid. I approached her cautiously, not sure if I should be afraid or not. She smiled at me, and I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me. She spoke to me in a voice that was like a whisper on the wind, and I felt myself drawn to her. But then I saw her eyes. They were dark and cold, like the depths of the ocean. And I realized that she was not what she seemed. I tried to swim away, but she grabbed me by the ankle and pulled me down into the water. I struggled to free myself, but she was too strong. I could feel myself running out of breath, and I knew that I was in real danger. But then, just as I thought it was over for me, she let go. I swam to the surface, gasping for air, and saw her swimming away into the depths of the ocean. I never went back to that cove again. But I still think about that mermaid, and wonder what would have happened if she hadn't let me go. I never believed in mermaids until one night, when I was out fishing alone in my small boat. It was a calm night, the moon was full and the stars were shining bright. I had always loved the peace and quiet of the ocean, but that night something was different. I felt like I was being watched. Suddenly, I heard a sound that I couldn't explain. It was like a woman singing, but the sound was coming from the water. I looked around but saw nothing, so I tried to ignore it and continue fishing. But the singing continued, and it was getting louder. I started to feel uneasy, but I couldn't figure out why. I decided to call it a night and head back to shore. That's when I saw her. A beautiful woman with long, flowing hair was swimming towards my boat. She was completely naked and had a fish tail instead of legs. At first, I thought I was hallucinating, but she was real. She smiled at me, revealing sharp teeth, and asked if I wanted to come and swim with her. Her voice was alluring, and I felt myself being drawn towards her. But something in my gut told me to stay away. I tried to start my boat's engine, but it wouldn't start. I looked up and saw that the woman was holding onto the back of my boat, preventing me from leaving. That's when I realized that she wasn't just a mermaid, but a siren. I knew the stories of sirens, how they would lure sailors to their death with their beautiful songs. I knew I had to get away from her, but my boat wouldn't budge. I grabbed my oar and started hitting the woman's hand, trying to get her to let go. She screamed and let go, and I started rowing as fast as I could towards the shore. The singing stopped, and I didn't look back until I was safely on land. When I did, the woman was gone. I never went back to the ocean alone again, and I never ignored my gut feeling again. The ocean is a beautiful and mysterious place, but it can also be dangerous. I'm not really sure if what I saw was real or if it was just my imagination. It happened last summer when I went on a solo camping trip to a secluded beach on the Pacific coast. I had always been fascinated by mermaids since I was a kid, so when I heard about this beach where mermaid sightings were rumored to occur, I knew I had to check it out. I arrived at the beach early in the morning and set up my tent near the shore. The beach was empty, except for a few seagulls and a pod of dolphins playing in the distance. I spent most of the day exploring the rocky cliffs and tide pools, taking pictures and enjoying the solitude. As the sun began to set, I returned to my campsite to cook some dinner. That's when I heard it, a strange singing coming from the ocean. It was hauntingly beautiful, and I couldn't help but follow the sound. I walked along the shore until I came to a secluded cove, and that's when I saw her. She was sitting on a rock, with her long hair cascading down her back, and her tail submerged in the water. She looked up at me with her large, glowing eyes, and I froze. At first, I thought she was a figment of my imagination, but she was too real to ignore. She beckoned me closer with a wave of her hand, and I found myself moving towards her. As I got closer, I realized that something was off. Her skin was mottled and scaly, and her teeth were sharp and pointed. She wasn't the beautiful creature I had imagined, she was something else entirely. Suddenly, she lunged at me with her razor-sharp teeth bared, and I bolted back to my campsite as fast as I could. I could hear her following me, singing her haunting melody all the while. I finally reached my tent and scrambled inside, zipping it shut behind me. I heard her singing outside, circling my tent, and I knew I was in danger. I stayed inside my tent, frozen with fear, until I heard her finally retreat back into the ocean. I didn't sleep that night, and I left the beach at first light, never looking back. I don't know what that creature was, but I do know that I never want to see her again. I've always loved the ocean. The sound of the waves crashing on the shore, the salty smell of the sea, and the feeling of the water on my skin. But one summer evening, my love for the ocean turned into a nightmare. It was late, and I had decided to take a swim in the ocean under the light of the moon. The water was calm, and the sky was clear. I swam out farther than I usually did, feeling the water envelope me as I dove in and out of the waves. That's when I saw her. A mermaid, with long flowing hair and shimmering scales. I thought I was hallucinating at first, but she was real, and she was staring straight at me. I was entranced by her beauty, but the longer I looked at her, the more I realized something was wrong. Her eyes were dark, almost black, and she had a look of hunger in them. I tried to swim away, but my body felt heavy, as if I was swimming through sludge. The mermaid followed me, her movements graceful and effortless. I started to panic, realizing that I was in danger. I tried to scream for help, but my voice was swallowed by the sound of the crashing waves. The mermaid was getting closer, and I could see her sharp teeth glinting in the moonlight. Suddenly, I felt a strong tug on my leg, and I was pulled under the water. The mermaid was dragging me down, and I couldn't break free. I thought it was the end for me, that I was going to become another victim of this creature of the sea. But then, something unexpected happened. The mermaid's grip loosened, and she swam away. I swam up to the surface, gasping for air. I looked around, but the mermaid was nowhere to be seen. I quickly swam back to shore, never looking back. It was a close call, one that I'll never forget. I don't know why the mermaid let me go, but I know that I won't be going back into the ocean at night anytime soon. I've always loved the ocean. There's something magical about the way the waves crash against the shore and the salty air fills your lungs. But one summer, my love for the sea turned into a terrifying encounter that still haunts me to this day. It was a hot August day, and I decided to take a swim in the ocean. The water was warm and inviting, and I found myself swimming further and further out. As I was treading water, I noticed something strange in the distance. At first, I thought it was a seal, but as it got closer, I realized it was a mermaid. I know it sounds crazy, but I swear on my life that it was a mermaid. She had long, flowing hair and a tail that shimmered in the sunlight. I was awestruck, and for a moment, I forgot about everything else. But as she got closer, I could see that she wasn't the friendly creature I had always imagined. Her eyes were dark and cold, and she had razor-sharp teeth. I could feel the fear building inside of me, and I knew I needed to get out of the water. But as I started to swim back to shore, she began to follow me, her tail propelling her through the water with ease. I could hear her whispering in a language I couldn't understand, and I knew I was in serious danger. I was terrified, and every fiber of my being was telling me to swim faster. I could feel her getting closer, and I knew I was running out of time. Finally, I made it to shore, and I stumbled onto the sand, gasping for breath. I turned around to see if she was still following me, but she was nowhere in sight. I never went back into the water that summer, and I never saw the mermaid again. To this day, I don't know what her intentions were, but I'm grateful to be alive. I learned that day that the ocean can be a dangerous place, and we should never underestimate the power of the creatures that live within it. I had always been drawn to the ocean. There was something about the way the waves crashed against the shore and the salty sea air that made me feel alive. So, when I decided to take a solo trip to the beach, I knew that I would spend most of my time by the water. On my second day there, I woke up early and walked down to the beach. It was still quiet, with only a few people out for an early morning swim. I decided to join them and waded into the cool water. That's when I saw her. She was beautiful, with long flowing hair and an iridescent tail that shimmered in the sunlight. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. A real-life mermaid, right in front of me. At first, I was thrilled. I swam closer to her, eager to get a better look. But as I got closer, something about her began to feel off. Her eyes were empty and soulless, and her smile was more of a grimace. I started to feel uneasy, but I couldn't bring myself to swim away. That's when she reached out and grabbed my arm. Her grip was strong, and I could feel her pulling me down into the water. I struggled against her, but it was no use. I was no match for her strength. Just as I thought all was lost, a group of nearby swimmers noticed my distress and rushed over to help. Together, they managed to pull me free from the mermaid's grasp and drag me back to shore. I was shaken and scared, but alive. It wasn't until later, when I was safe in my hotel room, that I realized how close I had come to death. I'll never forget that encounter with the mermaid. And I'll never go back to that beach again. I grew up near the coast and spent most of my childhood swimming in the ocean. So when I heard about a hidden cove that locals called Mermaid's Cove, I was intrigued. The cove was located about a mile down the beach from my usual swimming spot, but I had never ventured that far before. One day, I decided to check it out. I arrived at the cove just as the sun was setting, casting a golden light on the water. The cove was surrounded by tall cliffs and was completely secluded. I dove into the water and swam towards the middle of the cove. As I was swimming, I saw something moving beneath me. At first, I thought it was just seaweed, but then I saw a tail. It was a mermaid. I had never seen one before, but I had heard stories about them from my grandmother. The mermaid swam towards me, and I froze. I had always thought of mermaids as beautiful and friendly creatures, but this one looked different. Her eyes were black and soulless, and her skin was pale and slimy. The mermaid circled me, her tail brushing against my legs. I tried to swim away, but she was too fast. Suddenly, she grabbed my ankle and pulled me under the water. I struggled to break free, but she was too strong. I could feel myself running out of air, and I knew I was going to drown. Just as I was about to pass out, I saw a light above me. Someone had heard my screams and was shining a flashlight into the water. The mermaid let go of me and swam away, disappearing into the depths. I swam to the surface, gasping for air. The person who had saved me helped me back to shore. I looked back at the cove, but the mermaid was gone. To this day, I don't know what the mermaid wanted from me. But I do know that I never want to go back to Mermaid's Cove again. It was a warm summer night, and I decided to take a midnight swim in the ocean. As I dove into the water, I felt the cool embrace of the ocean around me. I swam out deeper and deeper until I was far from the shore. That's when I saw her. At first, I thought it was a dolphin, but as she got closer, I realized it was a mermaid. She was beautiful, with long flowing hair and sparkling green eyes. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. As she got closer, I could see that her face was different from a human's. It was more elongated, with sharp cheekbones and gills on the sides of her neck. She was so close to me that I could touch her, but I was too afraid to move. She smiled at me, and her voice was like music. She asked me to follow her, and I did, completely entranced. She led me deeper into the ocean, and I couldn't help but feel like I was in a dream. But then I saw it. A massive, dark shape lurking in the distance. As we got closer, I realized it was a shark, and it was coming straight for us. I tried to swim away, but the mermaid held me tight, pulling me closer to the shark. I thought it was the end for me, but then something miraculous happened. The shark turned away at the last moment, swimming off into the darkness. I don't know how it happened, but I'm convinced that the mermaid saved my life. She brought me back to the surface, and as I got out of the water, I turned to thank her. But she was gone, disappeared into the depths of the ocean. I never went swimming alone at night again, but I'll always remember that mermaid and the danger that came with her. I've always loved swimming in the ocean. The feeling of the waves crashing around me, the salty breeze on my skin, and the way the water envelopes me has always been exhilarating. That's why, when I moved to a coastal town a few years ago, I knew I'd found my home. One sunny afternoon, I decided to take a dip in the ocean. The water was warm and inviting, and I couldn't resist the urge to dive in. As I swam further out, I felt something brush against my leg. I assumed it was just seaweed, but the sensation was different. It was slimy and slippery, like nothing I'd felt before. Suddenly, I was pulled underwater. I struggled to swim back up to the surface, but something was holding me down. My lungs burned as I fought against whatever was pulling me deeper into the ocean. As I finally broke the surface, gasping for air, I saw a figure in the water below me. It was a mermaid. At first, I was in awe of her beauty. Her long hair floated around her, and her eyes glowed like the moon. But then, I saw her teeth. They were sharp and pointed, and her smile was anything but friendly. I knew I was in danger. I tried to swim away, but the mermaid was too fast. She chased me, her long tail propelling her through the water with ease. I could feel her hot breath on the back of my neck, and I knew that if she caught me, it would be the end. Finally, I saw the shore in the distance. I summoned all my strength and swam towards it, my heart pounding in my chest. I felt the mermaid's grip loosen as we got closer to the shore, and I knew that I was going to make it. As I stumbled out of the water, gasping for breath, I turned to look back at the ocean. The mermaid was gone, but I knew she was still out there, waiting for her next victim. From that day on, I never went back into the ocean alone. I warn everyone I meet to stay away from the water, to be careful and watchful. Because you never know when the mermaid will come for you. I never thought I'd be telling a story about a mermaid encounter, but here I am. It was a hot summer day and I decided to take a dip in the ocean after work. I work as a lifeguard, so I'm no stranger to the water. I swam out a few yards and just floated there, enjoying the cool water and the warm sun. That's when I saw her. At first, I thought it was just a large fish or maybe a seal, but as it got closer, I realized it was something else entirely. It was a mermaid. I couldn't believe my eyes. She had long, flowing hair and a beautiful face, but her eyes were dark and her expression was eerie. I couldn't tell if she was angry or scared, but I knew I had to get out of the water. I swam as fast as I could, but I could feel her following me. I could hear her singing, but it wasn't a pretty song. It was dark and haunting. It made me feel like I was being dragged down into the depths of the ocean. I knew I had to get to shore, but I was so tired. I didn't know if I could make it. Just when I thought I was going to pass out, I felt something grab my ankle. I panicked and kicked, but I couldn't break free. I looked down and saw the mermaid's face staring back at me. Her eyes were cold and her grip was strong. I knew I was in trouble. I don't remember how I managed to break free, but I must have somehow. I stumbled onto the beach, gasping for air. I looked back at the ocean and saw the mermaid staring back at me. She didn't move. She just watched me. I knew then that she wasn't just a beautiful creature of the sea. She was dangerous. And I had come too close. I never went back into the ocean after that day. I couldn't shake the feeling of her cold grip on my ankle or the haunting sound of her voice. I don't know what would have happened if I hadn't broken free. But I do know one thing. I'll never forget that mermaid encounter as long as I live. I've always loved the ocean. There's something about the way the waves crash against the shore and the salty scent of the sea that draws me in. But my recent encounter with a mermaid has left me questioning my love for the ocean. It happened just last week. I was out for a swim, enjoying the peacefulness of the water. The sun was shining, and the water was warm. I was in my happy place. That is, until I saw her. At first, I thought it was a trick of the light. A shimmering in the water that caught my eye. But as I got closer, I saw her clearly. A mermaid. She was beautiful, with long hair that flowed around her as she swam. I stopped in my tracks, unsure of what to do. I'd never seen a mermaid before, but I'd heard stories. Tales of mermaids luring sailors to their death. I felt a shiver run down my spine as I realized I was alone, vulnerable in the water. The mermaid continued to swim towards me, her face expressionless. As she got closer, I saw that her eyes were dark and unfathomable. I couldn't read her intentions. I tried to swim away, but she was too fast. Before I knew it, she had her arms wrapped around me, pulling me closer. I struggled, but she was too strong. It felt like her grip was tightening around me, threatening to pull me under the water. I don't know how I managed to break free, but somehow I did. I swam as fast as I could, heart pounding in my chest. I could feel her following me, her presence just behind me in the water. I finally made it to shore, collapsing on the sand. I was gasping for air, my heart racing. I looked back out at the water, but the mermaid was gone. Since then, I haven't been able to shake the feeling of her hands around my neck, threatening to pull me under the water. I've avoided the ocean, afraid of what else might be lurking beneath the surface. The ocean is no longer my happy place, but a place of danger and unknown terrors. I always loved the ocean. The sound of the waves, the salty smell in the air, and the feeling of the sun on my skin. That's why I decided to take a solo trip to a small beach town on the East Coast. I rented a cozy little cottage right by the water, with a beautiful view of the ocean. On my first day, I spent hours just lounging on the beach, soaking up the sun, and reading my book. But as the sun started to set, I decided to take a dip in the ocean. The water was cool and refreshing, and I swam out further than I ever had before. I was just enjoying the moment when I saw something in the water. At first, I thought it was just a dolphin, but as it got closer, I realized it was something else entirely. It was a mermaid. She was beautiful, with long flowing hair and a glittering tail. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. She swam up to me and smiled, and I felt myself freeze. I'd heard stories about mermaids before, and none of them were good. But she seemed friendly enough, and before I knew it, we were talking. She told me about her life in the ocean, the creatures she had seen, and the treasures she had found. I listened, enthralled by her stories. But as the conversation went on, something changed. Her smile turned sinister, and her eyes seemed to glint in the moonlight. Suddenly, she lunged at me, her sharp teeth bared. I barely managed to swim away, and I sprinted out of the water as fast as I could. I could hear her laughter echoing behind me as I ran up the beach. I never went back in the water after that. I spent the rest of my vacation in that little cottage, staring out at the ocean and wondering what would have happened if I hadn't gotten away. Now, every time I hear stories about mermaids, I can't help but shudder, knowing that there are dangerous creatures lurking just beneath the waves. I had always been fascinated by the ocean and everything that lived within it. So when my friend invited me to join her on a scuba diving trip, I jumped at the chance. We arrived at our destination early in the morning and quickly got suited up for our dive. As we descended into the water, I couldn't believe how clear and beautiful everything was. Schools of brightly colored fish swam around us, and the coral formations were unlike anything I had ever seen before. We explored for a while, taking in the sights, and then we noticed something odd. There was a faint singing sound, almost like a lullaby, coming from somewhere nearby. At first, we thought it might be another group of divers, but as we followed the sound, it became clear that it was coming from deeper underwater. We continued to swim towards the sound, and as we got closer, we saw something that made my blood run cold. It was a mermaid. She had long, flowing hair and a shimmering tail, and she was singing softly to herself. For a moment, I was enchanted by the sight, but then I remembered all the stories I had heard about mermaids luring sailors to their deaths. I motioned to my friend that we needed to leave, but as we turned to swim away, the mermaid noticed us. She swam towards us with lightning-fast speed, her eyes fixed on me. I tried to swim faster, but I could feel her tail brushing against me. Just as I thought all hope was lost, my friend managed to get a hold of my arm and pull me away. We made a mad dash for the surface, not stopping until we were safely back on our boat. I never spoke of what we saw to anyone, but I know what I saw that day, and I will never forget it. I sometimes wonder if I had stayed a moment longer, if I would have been the one lured to my death by that beautiful, but deadly creature.